Alright. Okay, so can anybody see my screen? You can make use of the chat, or you also have the buttons in your participant panel. So are you able to hear me? Anybody? Okay, thank you, Luisa. Thanks. So I think you should be able to hear me. Okay, so we are 17 people. We are not that many. So in case you have questions, comments while we go through the presentation, just you can make use of the chat, or just use your microphone and stop me at any moment. Okay. So as we were saying, today's session, it's dedicated for travel administrators that will be raising travel requests on behalf of UNVs or other non-staff like consultants, meeting participants, contractors, and other non-staff. Okay, so this session is dedicated for the travel administrators, for UN volunteers, and other non-staff. Okay. Here in this slide, what I want to summarize is the different travel types for the different staff, okay, or the different non-staff. All right. So in columns you have the different type of travelers. So in the first column you have the UN volunteers, second column consultants, and in third column I indicated the other non-staff like contractors, meeting participants, and so on. Okay, and in rows, what I'm trying to indicate are the different travel types. Okay, so within the travel category official travel, you as a travel administrator, you'll be able to raise travel requests that belong to the different travel types for official travel. For example, you can travel within mission, UNVs, consultants, and other non-staff. And the same thing applies for outside mission area official business travel. So you can raise travel requests to travel a UNV or a consultant or other non-staff outside mission area. All right. So as a travel administrator, you can use any travel type within the official travel category to travel UNVs, consultants, and other non-staff. All right. And then there are specific travel types that only apply to a specific type of travelers. For example, R&R, they only apply besides international staff, but now we are talking about UNVs and non-staff. So R&R travel only applies in this case to UNVs. So if you have been granted with the travel administrator role for UNVs, you should also be able to raise rest and recuperation trips or travel requests for UNVs. Okay, and the same thing for HR travel. So HR travel, the appointment travel in this case, it's only applying to consultants. So the appointment travel request for UNVs, you will not be doing that because it's all the trips for the onboarding of the UNVs, it's managed, if I'm not mistaken, from UNVNS. Okay, the ones taking care of the onboarding for the UNVs. But if you need to travel, if you need to onboard a consultant, as a travel administrator for non-staff, you will be also able to raise an appointment travel request that are within the HR travel category to onboard the consultant. Okay, I can hear some noise. Do you have any question? All right, so I think it was somebody with the microphone that was unmuted. If your microphone is not working well, so you can also make use of the chat. Okay, so you want to ask any question or comment, just make use of the chat, and I'll try to go through all of them and try to provide an answer to your questions. Okay, so in this first slide, we were discussing about the official travel category that applies to any type of non-staff categories, UNVs, consultants, contractor, and other non-staff. Then R&R travel that relates to only to UNV subgroup, okay, and the appointment travel within the HR category that applies mainly to consultants. All right. All right, and then we have, here in this WebEx, we are focusing on the new traveler categories that we are implementing within this project. Okay, so for example, we have a question regarding international staff. Okay, somebody in the chat is asking about what about international staff and the R&R and the official business. Okay, so international staff have been using Umoja, okay, for since cluster 4, right, since 2016, and they can raise their own travel request. So international staff, they can raise their own R&R travel request and also their own official business travel request using Umoja and using the employee self-service. Okay, so here we are mainly focusing on the new traveler categories. All right, so I think the person cannot hear me. You're still able to hear me, right? So I think it should be something from his end. Okay, so let's continue. So here we were talking about the different travel categories. Okay. Are you still able to hear me? Because I have two people that are saying that they cannot hear me. Can anybody confirm that you can still hear me? Okay, thank you, Paolo. So we have different travel administrators roles, right? So within, the new ones that have been included with this implementation are the TV04, so travel administrator role for UNVs, and normally we always have code for each role. And so the travel administrator role that is in charge of raising travel requests for UNVs is the travel administrator UNV role, the TV04. Okay. Remember that UNVs, they don't have access to the portal. They cannot raise any travel request by themselves. So as a travel administrator for UNVs, you are the one that will raise any type of travel request on behalf of UNVs because they have not been granted with access to the portal. Another travel administrator role that is new with this implementation is TV05, and they are the ones raising travel requests on behalf of uniform personnel. So they are the ones raising deployment and repatriation travel for uniform personnel and any other within mission or any other official travel request on behalf of uniform personnel. And this is TV05. Then we have TV06, that is the travel administrator role that deals with all other non-staff categories, all other non-staff besides volunteers, like for example meeting participants, consultants, contractors, fellows, so all other non-staff categories. This TV06 role is the one that can raise travel requests on behalf of this non-staff. And remember that all non-staff and also UNVs, they don't have access to the portal, and all the travel requests are done on behalf by the travel administrator. Okay. A different thing happens with with the staff, right? So national staff and also international staff have access to the portal, and basically they can raise their travel request directly using the portal. Okay, so in principle, they don't have a need for a travel administrator to raise the travel request on their behalf. But even though they have access to the portal, in some exceptional cases, for example, if they are in a location with no internet connection, they could request help from the travel administrator, and this travel administrator that can raise trips or can raise travel requests or expense reports on behalf of national staff or international staff is the TV02 role, the travel administrator O, that is basically responsible for helping national staff and international staff in case they don't have access to the portal at some point in time. All right. More details about these roles can be found in ISIC. Right. So I'm here. I'll share this presentation after this session, and here you have the link to ISIC, where the different roles and the description of each role can be found. Okay, so here you have the link to the PDF where you can see the different roles and the description. Okay, so for example, with this link, you will be able to reach. This is the Umoja role guide. Okay, so in here you'll have the description. Okay, and this is the link I've put in the presentation. So with this PDF, you will be able to see the description for all the different roles, not only travel-related roles, but any role that is available in Umoja. So here in the beginning, you have all the BI roles for BI, for reporting, and then if we scroll down, let me scroll down, you have all the fund management, all the HR roles, and if we scroll down, we will find the TV, that are the ones that are related to travel. Okay, so let me scroll down, and we will find all the TV roles. Okay, so we have the travel and shipment administrator O, and then as we were saying, we have the TV04 travel and shipment administrator for UNVNS, the same thing for uniform personnel, and the TV06, that is the one that is responsible for non-staff. So even if you see here NS, it means non-staff. Right? So once you click on any of the roles, you will reach the description of the role and what they are supposed to do, okay, and which are the different travel categories or travelers that they can manage. For example, in here, we just went to the TV06 travel administrator for non-staff, and here you have the description. Okay, so users mapped to this role, they will be able to manage any kind of non-staff employee groups, including consultants, contractors, meeting participants, and fellows. So if you want to see more details about any of the roles, you can always go to this document and see the details, okay, what kind of travel requests they can raise, and expense reports, and so on. All right, and in here, in the presentation, you have the link to that role guide PDF document. Okay. All right, no questions so far, so let's move ahead. One thing that we need to consider, and as a travel administrator, even if you are not responsible for creating index numbers and HR minimaster, one thing you need to consider is that whenever you need to raise a travel request for any kind of traveler, no matter if we are talking about a UNV, a consultant, or a meeting participant, for any kind of traveler, you always need in Umoja an index number and an HR minimaster. So index number and HR minimaster is not only required for staff members, but it's also required for UNVs and non-staff if we need to raise a travel request for them. So as a travel administrator, you are not responsible for creating index numbers and HR minimaster, but you need to know that without that, you will not be able to raise travel requests for them. So you'll need to contact the HR section to make sure that the travelers have a proper index number and an HR minimaster. Okay. So as part of this implementation, as part of Cluster 5, within this implementation, we are opening the travel module not only for international staff, but also for national staff, UN volunteers, uniform personnel, and consultants and other non-staff. All existing consultants that were already being paid using Umoja, so all existing consultants already had proper business partners because we were paying all our consultants, we were paying all of them using Umoja, using the foundation modules in Umoja, right? So all the existing consultants have been already given an index number and an HR minimaster. So if as a travel administrator you want to travel an existing consultant, they should already have an index number and an HR minimaster because all the existing consultants have been migrated to the new solution and they already have an index number and an HR minimaster. Okay, so you shouldn't be having problems traveling existing consultants. However, if you are traveling a new consultant, right? So for example, if you have to raise an appointment travel request for a new consultant that doesn't have yet a business partner, then you will need to contact the HR section because the HR section will need to create an index number and an HR minimaster for this new consultant. Or if you need to travel a UNV or a contractor, so UNVs and contractors, they didn't have an index number or an HR minimaster before. Okay, so if you will need to raise a travel request for them, you'll need to contact the HR section to make sure they have an index number and an HR minimaster record created for them. Okay, otherwise, as a travel administrator, you will not be able to raise a travel request on their behalf. So Paulo is asking that, so which number, so which index number are you supposed to use for them? So they should have an index number, and if they never travel, for example, let's say we are talking about a UNV that you never traveled before, you'll need to contact the HR section in your unit to make sure that they create a new index number for them and they populate the HR profile so that you can initiate the travel request. So if you are trying to raise a travel request for a UNV that never traveled, you have to make sure that this UNV has a proper index number and a proper HR minimaster. And for that, your best point of contact is going to be always your HR partner, because the HR partner are the ones that can raise or can create index numbers and can create the HR minimaster to allow you to travel that person. Okay, Paulo? So in case of doubt, I mean, in the portal we'll see afterwards that you can search for the person, okay, and if the person doesn't have a proper index number or a proper HR minimaster, you will not be able to travel them. So the system will tell you that that person doesn't have a proper HR minimaster. Okay. But so yes, so as a summary, you should remember that HR minimaster and HR and the index number, it's a mandatory. It's mandatory for any kind of traveler now in Umoja. All right. So let's move ahead, and I wanted to emphasize the following points. Okay, so you will need to indicate several information when you are raising a travel request, but these fields are really important. So when you are raising a travel request, you have to make sure that you are selecting the proper travel type. And by travel type, we mean, you know, that if you are raising a travel request within the official travel category, there are different travel types. For example, within mission, you have another travel type that could be training, another one that is official business. So you have to pay attention and make sure you select the proper travel type. So travel type has an impact on the budget and the FI side, on the finance side. So depending on the travel type you select, one or a different GL could be used, right? And a different type of budget could be used. So make sure that if you are traveling a UNV within mission, you select within mission travel type. If you are traveling a UNV outside mission area, you select official business, right? If the UNV is going on official business outside mission area. Okay. All right. So this is so make sure that you select the proper travel type when you are raising a travel request. Okay. Then we have a question about the different roles. So TV02. So if you need to travel UNVs, the only one that can do it is the TV04, not even the TV02, that is the travel administrator O. So only TV04 will be able to raise travel requests on behalf of UNVs. So make sure that you have the travel administrator for UNVs if you need to raise travel requests on behalf of UNVs. The same thing applies for non-staff. So if you need to travel non-staff, make sure you map somebody as a TV06 for travel administrator non-staff. All right. Can anybody hear me? Hello? Yes. All right. Okay. All right. I think I had a problem with my microphone, so at some point I was hearing a lot of noise. Okay, but it seems it's working again, so sorry about that. Okay, so let's continue. So pay attention to the travel type and make sure you select the proper one, especially when you are traveling a person within using the official travel category. Make sure that you select the proper travel type within that travel category. Okay. Second thing I wanted to emphasize is the cost assignment part. So in the cost assignment, normally you will need to make sure that the proper cost center and fund are indicated. So make sure that as a travel administrator, you are using the right fund and cost center that will be charged for that specific trip. So as a travel administrator, you will normally go to the cost assignment and change or update fund and cost center to the one that should be used for that particular trip. Okay, and remember that that cost assignment will be deriving the certifying officers that will be able to see that particular travel request in their work centers and will be able to certify that travel request. So make sure you always check that the proper cost assignment is used in the travel request. Okay, we can have a look later on to the system, and we can see how we can change the cost assignment as a travel administrator. And the last thing I wanted to emphasize is the travel processing office. So as a travel administrator, you'll be able to check or to specify which should be the travel processing office that will be responsible for purchasing the tickets, okay, for that particular trip, right? So travel processing office is the field using the system to specify which are going to be the TPOs, which are going to be the travel processing officers that will see the travel request on their work centers and will be able to process it, to process the travel request and approve it, to make sure that the vendor will purchase the ticket for that trip. Okay. So, I mean, the other fields are also important, but I wanted to emphasize and make sure that you pay attention specifically to the travel type, to the cost assignment, and to the TPO. So basically, the cost assignment and the TPO will have impact in the workflow, all right, on the list of certifying officers and travel processing officers that will be able to approve and certify the travel request. All right. Okay. In here, in this slide, you can see the different steps that are related to official travel. So here we have the different steps. So everything begins with the HR process. So we always need an index number and an HR minimaster, no matter the travel type. But in here we are specifying the HR process also as part of it. All right, and then the process to create and approve a travel request is as for any other traveler category, right? So for official business, so the travel request for UNVs and non-staff will be always done by the travel administrator, because we said that UNVs and non-staff, they will not have access to the portal, so it will be always the travel administrator raising the travel request on behalf. Okay. Then this travel request will go to the TSA, to the certifying officer, based on the cost assignment. And although you're asking about how do you get to know the fund and cost center. So the first thing you need to ask the UNV, if, for example, the UNV is asking you to travel himself or to raise a travel request on behalf of the UNV, you need to know who's paying for his trip. So you need to ask UNV, or if it's a consultant that is traveling within mission, you need to ask the consultant to know who is going to be paying for his trip. Okay, so this is something you should be asking your traveler, because that's the one that should be telling you who's going to pay for his trip, either if it's within mission or outside mission. So it can be different cost centers. Maybe if the trip is related to a specific project, maybe that project will be the one that will be charged for that particular trip. So as a travel administrator, you should be asking your traveler who should be paying for his trip. All right. So I hope my voice is not breaking. All right. Although you're saying that my voice is a little bit unclear. So let me reply first to Moses. Yes, you're right. So the travelers should always get their leave request approved, okay, by their supervisors. But remember that leave request or leave management is in Umoja is only done for national staff and for international staff. Okay, so leave management for UN volunteers or for consultants is not managed in Umoja. So for sure they will they will need to get their approvals from the supervisor in order to travel, but that leave request is not done in Umoja. Okay, so UNVs will need to get their approval from the supervisor, but that approval and that process of the leave request as of today is not done in Umoja. So leave management is only done in Umoja for international staff and for national staff. Okay. So travel request is raised by the travel administrator and certified by the TSA, and later on approved by the TPOs. Okay, the TPO, that is the travel processing officers that are liaising with the vendor in case it's needed. So before this implementation, the TPO role was the TB10. The TB10 is the TPO commercial, the ones that have gone with the vendor to purchase tickets. With this implementation, we are including the many other traveler categories that will use mostly within mission trips, like for example, uniformed personnel or UN volunteers and even consultants. Most of their trips are within mission, and a new role, a new TPO role has been created. This TB20, that is the TPO non-commercial, and they will receive all non-commercial travel requests. Basically, all travel requests that don't require any commercial ticket. That's why in here we have two different types of TPOs, one for commercial tickets and another one for non-commercial. Okay, TB10 and TB20. All right. Then we can also have the ticket billing process. So vendors will purchase the tickets and they will send UN the invoices, and the invoices will be paid by finance people in the missions to pay the different tickets. And after the travel request has been fully approved, and also remember that spend reports can only be done once the traveler has come back from their trips. So once the traveler has come back from their trip, as a travel administrator, you will be able to create the expense report. Remember that as a travel administrator, you can only raise the expense report if the travel request is fully approved, and only after the traveler has come back from their trip. Okay. The spend reports might require approval if there are additional expenses included in the spend report. If there are no additional expenses, the spend report is submitted and approved automatically by the system. But if there are additional expenses, the spend report needs to be recertified by the TSA, by certifying officer, and finally approved by the travel claims processors. Okay, so as a travel administrator for UNVs or for non-staff, you will be raising the travel request on behalf of the traveler, and then once the traveler has come back from their trip, you will be able also to raise the spend report. Right? So these are the different steps for the official travel category. No matter if it's within mission or outside mission area, the steps and roles involved in the process are the same. Okay, so most of the trips for UNVs, consultants, and other non-staff categories are going to be basically using the official travel category, and in here you have the different steps and roles involved. So Irfan, who is the travel claims processor? So the travel claims processor are the ones receiving all the expense reports coming from travel administrators or from staff members that have access to the portal to raise their expense reports, and they are responsible for reviewing the different expenses, okay, to make sure that the amounts paid are correct. Okay, so they will receive. They are the ones. It's a role mostly in finance, and they are responsible for reviewing the different claims submitted by the travelers or by the travel administrators. Okay. All right. So this is the process for official travel. Then for R&R. R&R, remember that in our case, it's only applicable for UNVs. So besides international staff that they are already using R&R entitlement travel since cluster 4, within this implementation, R&R only applies for UNVs. And the process, steps, and roles involved in the R&R process is the same as we have today for international staff. So there are 3 different available options for R&R. So we have the option of free UN transportation. All right. So if the R&R, if the staff member is going to be using only UN transportation for their R&R, the roles and steps involved in that travel is going to be, let me show it to you. Okay. All right. Sorry. Yeah. So in here, I included in the presentation, I included the link. Okay. So in here, you have the link to the job aid explaining the different roles involved in the R&R travel when free UN transportation is required. So by using the link, you will come to this job aid, okay, for the R&R using free UN transportation. So in the case of UNVs, you're going to be the travel administrator for UNVs, travel TV04, raising the travel request on behalf of the UNV. And this travel request will be reviewed by the HR partner, right? The HR partner in the mission that will review and approve the entitlement. So they will check that the R&R cycle is correct, and they can and the UNV can go on R&R. So the travel request, as the UNV is using free UN transportation, it will require only the approval by the HR partner. Okay, there is no further approval for the travel request, only the HR partner. And after the UNV has come back from their R&R, you as a travel administrator, you will be able to submit the expense report. And if there are additional expenses, the expense report will need to be approved by the certifying officer and later on by the travel claims processor. Okay, so this is the first option, the R&R travel for when the UNV or when the mission is offering free UN transportation to the R&R destination. Okay. Then, second option we have for R&R is the lump sum option. So there are locations where there is no free UN transportation to the R&R place, and and in this case the UNV can ask for the lump sum option. Okay, and there are additional roles and steps involved for that process, for the R&R process with lump sum. And in here you can see the link to that process. So we are going to have a look at the different steps and roles. Okay, and in here we have the entitlement travel with lump sum option. Okay, there are a little bit more roles and steps involved. So everything is initiated by the travel administrator in the case of UNVs. In the case of international staff, remember that they have access to the portal and they can raise their own R&R travel. But for UNVs, they don't have access to the portal, and everything is done on their behalf by the travel administrator. As with the UN free transportation, the first role involved in checking the R&R request is the HR partner. Okay, so the HR partner is the first role involved in the R&R travel, and they are the ones checking for the eligibility, right? Checking that the staff member is entitled to R&R in that period. And in this case, as the traveler requested lump sum calculation, after the HR partner has approved the R&R travel request, the travel request will go to the TPO office, to the TPO, the travel processing officer, who will calculate the lump sum amount. Right? When they have calculated, the TPO will calculate the lump sum amount, and you will receive in your Traveler Work Center, as a travel administrator, you will receive the lump sum amount for the UNV. Okay, so with that amount at this stage, you as a travel administrator, you can decide if you want to grant the UNV with that lump sum amount, or you prefer UN to purchase the ticket for that R&R request. Okay, so after the TPO has calculated the lump sum amount, you will receive the request in your work center, and you will be able to decide if you want to grant the UNV with the lump sum amount, or you prefer the UN to purchase the ticket to the R&R destination for the UN. And then you have the different branches, right? So on the left, we have the branch in case you decided to grant the ticket, and on the right, you have the branch in case you decided as travel administrator to go for the lump sum option. So if you decide to grant the travel administrator, as travel administrator, you decide the lump sum option, the travel request will go to the TSA, and automatically after the TSA approves the travel request, the system will disburse the lump sum amount to the traveler, right, to the UNV as an advance, right? So after you decide to go with the lump sum option, the travel request will go to the TSA for approval. If you decide the ticket option, you as a travel administrator, you will need to amend the estimated ticket cost, because until this stage you didn't indicate any estimated cost for the ticket. And afterwards, once you have updated the estimated cost, the travel request will require approval by the certifying officer and the approval by the TPO, who will contact the vendor to get the ticket for that particular R&R trip. All right, and so that will be the part of the travel request. So this, if in the R&R trip you start by selecting lump sum calculation, the HR partner will need to approve the eligibility, and the TPO will calculate the total, the estimated lump sum amount that you will be able to confirm, or you will be able to decide that you don't want the lump sum and you prefer UN to purchase the ticket, right? And then once the trip is fully approved, the expense report part is the same. All right, the expense report part, you will be able to raise it on behalf of the UN volunteer, and the expense report will be approved by the TSA and by the travel claims processors. Okay, so this is the second option for the R&R travel, the lump sum option, and the last option is the ticket one. So as a travel administrator, you have another option, that is when you initiate the R&R travel, you can decide from the very beginning that you will grant, or you want the UN to purchase the ticket, and you don't want the UN to calculate lump sum. So if you from the very beginning you start the R&R request by selecting ticket option, the steps and roles will be slightly different. Will be, let me show it to you. This is the one. So this is the entitlement travel with ticket option. So if you from the very beginning, as a travel administrator, you create the travel request and you select ticket, that will follow a similar process compared to the official travel. The only difference will be that the HR partner will be involved in checking eligibility, but then after the HR partner has approved it, then it will go to TSA and TPO, as with any other official travel trip. Okay, and then the spend report will be the same as always. So spend report will be initiated by the travel administrator, and then TSA and travel claims processor will be involved in the approval process. All right. So that was the part of the R&R, and later on we can see how that looks in the system. And the HR travel, remember that it only applies for, for this implementation, it only applies for consultants in order to have their appointment. So consultants can be entitled for the appointment travel, and you as a travel administrator for non-staff, you should be able to raise appointment travel requests for consultants. And as you can see here, the travel request process is very similar as the one we saw for the entitlement ticket option. So you initiate the travel request, HR partner approves it, and then TSA and TPO will be involved in the travel request approval. And then the spend report part is, as in any other case, raised by the travel administrator for travelers that don't have access to the portal, and reviewed and approved by the certifying officer and by the travel claims processor. Okay, so Moses, you're asking about a question about the mapping. All right, so in here we are always talking about Umoja roles, and then you need to understand in your mission that who has been granted with these Umoja roles. So the Umoja roles can be granted to different people based on mission needs. So you will need to understand that if the approval roles have been granted to the field administrative officers, you are asking in your comment in the chat. So in here, what we are talking about are the roles in the system. Okay, and then according to your mapping, according to your user access mapping, these different roles are granted to different units or sections in your mission. All right. Okay. So here, up to here was the presentation, and let's have a look at the system, how the different processes and the different screens appear in the system. Yeah, so Irfan, good question about the spend report. So in the spend report, we are always indicating that the spend report is initiated, in this case, by the travel administrator, and then approved by the TSA and the travel claims processor. But remember the concept of express spend report. So if the travel, right, if there are no additional expenses compared to what was submitted in the travel request, the spend report will be automatically approved by the system, meaning that after you submit a spend report, it will become automatically approved without a need for further review by the TSA or by the travel claims processor. So only if you add additional expenses, or only if you change, for example, the trip dates and the UNV or the non-staff is entitled for additional DSA, the spend report will require recertification and approval by the TCP. So if there are no changes compared to what was submitted in the travel request, the spend report will be automatically approved. All right, Irfan? Okay, thank you. So okay, so I'm gonna try to connect to the portal. Okay, so give me 1 minute and we will continue with him. All right. So sorry about that. We are back again. Okay. Um, all right. Okay. So I just logged in into the training portal. Okay. And in here, I'm playing the role of the travel administrator. So in here, I can use the create and process travel on behalf. I hope you can still see my screen. Hello? Please remember to mute your microphone. Okay, thank you, Jane. All right, so I think you can still see my screen. Thank you, Irfan. So from here, I'll be able to raise a travel request on behalf of UMPs. So what's travel, depending on your role, you have been granted as a travel administrator. In here, you will be able to include only UMPs or to include only non-staff. So if you have been granted, for example, with the, let's go back to our presentation. Let me put back again the roles. So remember that these were the roles. Okay, so if you only have the TV04 role, you will be able only to include here volunteers. So when you add employees, right, even if it says employees, it means travelers, right, because it's not only about staff members. So you can add, using the index number, you can add volunteers if you only have the TV04. If you have the TV05 role, you will be able to add uniform personnel, meaning staff officers, police officers. If you have the TV06 role, you will be able to include, or you will be able to include consultants to raise travel requests on behalf of consultants, on behalf of meeting participants, on behalf of individual contractors. That's where the roles come in help. Okay, so depending on the role you have been granted, you will be able to raise travel requests on behalf of different travelers. If you have the TV02 role, right, and this is Nasrullah, this is answering to your question. So you will need the TV02 role in order to process travel requests on behalf of international staff and national staff. But remember that both national staff and international staff, they have access to the portal and they should be, in most cases, raising the travel request by themselves. All right, so even in order to raise travel requests on behalf of national staff and international staff, you need to have this TV02 travel administrator role. Okay. So depending on your role, you can add you can use the add employee. So in here, you will see all the different travelers for which you have already processed a travel request. If you want to process a travel request for a new person, for a new traveler, you can use the add employee, right? And from the add employee, if you know the index number, you can type it here directly, all right? Or if you don't know the index number, you can always use the match code. You can always use this button and use the search by last name, first name. Okay, so you can use this search in order to look for your traveler. Okay, and when you search for it and you click on OK, the staff member, or sorry, in this case, the UMB will appear in your table, in your employee list, and you can start initiating travel request for that particular person by selecting that line. So in our case, if I want to raise a travel request for Karen Peters, I can select the line for Karen, and on the bottom I will see the different travel requests for that particular person. No matter if the travel requests were raised by me as travel administrator or by another travel administrator. Okay? All right. So how can you know which roles you have been granted? Normally, when you connect to the portal, in this case, we cannot see it, but you have user map, right? User map tab, and from there you can see your roles, and even you can always contact your SLO, right? Your security liaison officer, who is the one responsible for granting new roles, and he should be able to tell you which roles you have in the system. So either by using the user map tab in the portal, or for more information, you can always contact your SLO, your security liaison officer in your mission, who is the one that is granting, or they can check the roles for any particular person in the mission. Okay. So in here, we can see all the different trips for that particular person, and you can see, for example, you have, in this case, we are talking about a UMB, so you have the travel types that correspond to official business, and others that correspond to R&R. Okay, you have the different travel requests, and what is important here in the work center is the workflow status. So this column is important. So as a travel administrator, you should be checking the workflow status. So this column, it's very important to understand what is the status of the different travel requests, and also the recommended actions. So you should be able to understand what's the status of each travel request by looking at these two columns. So for example, the one in orange, it's a rest and recuperation trip, okay, and the status, it says CO approved, and as recommended actions, create and submit expense report. Right, so by looking at the status, we can see that the travel request was fully approved because the system is already asking the administrator to create and submit the expense report. So we can see that the travel request was fully approved, and now we are in the process of raising the expense report. We can see that the trip end date is in the past, so the trip ended in April. So we should be able, as a travel administrator, we are already late, so remember that expense reports should be raised within 14 days, okay, after the trip end date. But it's important that you understand the workflow status and the recommended actions. And depending on the different steps and roles that we explained before, you should be able to understand what's the status of each trip. Alright, so from here, as a travel administrator, we can create travel requests. So we can create an official travel request and we can create an entitlement travel. Or we could even create an expense report. Alright, if we click on the, so let me go first to the expense report part. It will only take me 1-2 minutes, but I want to emphasize the importance of creating expense reports linked to approved travel requests. So please pay attention for 2 minutes on the expense report part, because we had in cluster 4 we had really problems with staff members or even travel administrators that were submitting the expense report wrongly. Okay, so here we have to differentiate the standalone expense report with the expense reports linked to a travel request. So when we click on the create expense report, the system will bring us to a new screen, and from here the system is displaying, you can see, so in here all these trips are the trips for which we can submit a related expense report. So the trip will only appear in this list if the trip is fully approved and the trip end date is in the past. Meaning that we can only submit a related expense report if the trip is fully approved and the staff member has already come back from travel. Remember, if there is a travel request, you should always find your travel request here. Otherwise, if it's not appearing here, the reason could be that the trip is not yet fully approved or the staff member hasn't come back yet from the trip. So if it doesn't appear here, you should go back to your work center and check for the status of the travel request. So in order to submit a related travel request, a related expense report, you should select on the trip and click on Start to submit the related expense report. And then this one on the bottom, so this part here, it should only be used for exceptional cases. So this part at the bottom, this part at the bottom should only be used for standalone expense reports. This is for standalone expense reports. Okay, and the standalone expense reports, remember that it's an option in case it's an option for urgent trips, right? For urgent trips that last 3 days or less, no advance and no commercial ticket. So if we are talking about an urgent trip that lasts 3 days or less and there is no advance and there is no commercial ticket, the standalone expense report could be an option. So you can just create a standalone expense report without a travel request to travel the person. Is the standalone expense report concept new for you? Are you familiar with the standalone expense report? Any question in that regard? Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Thank you. So this is what I wanted to tell you about the spend report part. So in 99% of the cases, when you are raising the spend report, you should always be finding your approved travel request here. You should be selecting the travel request and clicking on start to initiate the related spend report. Let's move back to our Traveler Work Center and let's see how we can initiate a travel request. So from the travel administration link, create and process travel on behalf. From here, we can select the traveler and click on create either. So we need to make sure that we are selecting the proper travel category. So depending on the travel request is related to official business or to R&R, to entitlement travel. So let's do an example of the official travel. And the first thing that the system will ask the travel administrator is to select the proper travel type. And let me go back to the presentation. And in here, we need to pay attention again to the travel type. So we need to make sure that as a travel administrator, you select the proper travel type, because that will have an impact in budget. So in here, this selection should be the correct one. So if you are traveling the staff member within mission, you should be selecting travel type number 12. It doesn't appear in the training environment, but in production, you should be having travel type number 12, 1, 2, that will be within mission DFS travel type. And that should be always the one that should be used for within mission travel. If you are traveling the UNV on training, let's say to another region or to another mission, you should be using travel type 02, and that will consume the funds available for training. Okay, and even the FI postings will be done for the training yield. Okay, for official business outside mission area, you should be selecting travel type 01. So let's select one of them. Let's say that the UNV is going outside mission area on official business. We are going to select travel type 01. And this is related to the question you were having just before about the applicable leave. So UNVs, they don't have access to, they cannot raise leave request in Umoja, but they still need to get their supervisor approval. And they need to, as a travel administrator, you will flag that the UNV has already got the leave request approved. Okay, so click on General Data to go to the next screen. And in the next screen, we will be able to indicate the itinerary details for the UNV. So in here, the traveler type is non-staff. It comes by default. And let's say we want to travel round trip. Okay. The work start day, let's say that he's going to be traveling 25th July. Will indicate the time, and he's going for 4 days or 5 days, the 30th July. So here is this work start and end date are important for the TPO. So with this information, we will tell the TPO when the staff member has to be there to start working. So we will be indicating that the 25th at 9 a.m. the UNV should be already there at work, okay, to start. And the last day of work will be the 30th July at 5. So that will be used by the TPO to arrange the tickets for that particular travel. Okay. In here we can indicate the travel purpose, outside mission area, official. Okay. You can put something as travel purpose, official business travel. We can indicate other details as comments and the itinerary, the proposed itinerary. So we can indicate that the staff member will be traveling 24th, okay, 24th July from, let's say, from Juba to using a UN flight all right, arriving the same day to Entebbe. Okay. So here you will be able to indicate the itinerary details. We should be able to select the subsistence region to calculate. So with this subsistence region, the system will be able to calculate the DSA entitlements. Okay, you select the subsistence region. So based on the region, the amount payable as DSA will be different. Now, in order to indicate the way out leg, I'm going to use the copy function here in this in the system. So this staff member will come back the 30th from Entebbe UN aircraft, arriving again on the 30th to Juba. Okay. You can indicate if there's going to be any personal deviation for that trip. If you select yes, the system will allow you to indicate the deviation details. Remember that in the itinerary, you should only indicate the official itinerary. So if there are deviations, you shouldn't be updating the itinerary, but you should be indicating the deviation request in the deviation waiver. Okay, so the itinerary should only be the official one. All right. Yeah. Okay. So in here we have some questions about this one. Okay. So on the way back, normally we will select no DSA because the on the last day the staff member is not entitled for DSA. Okay, but you can check. So depending on what you select here, the amount. So the thing that you need to understand is that the total amount that is payable as DSA should be the correct one. So in this case, if the staff member is going from the 24th until the 30th, staff members should be, I mean, depending on the start and end dates, staff members should be entitled for 4 days or differently. Okay, so based on that, based on the itinerary, the system will calculate the applicable subsistence. So we can see if you click on additional data, I'm going to click on additional data, and based on the departure and arrival dates and the applicable subsistence region, the system will automatically calculate the applicable subsistence. Okay, so I just clicked on additional data, and let's see the other part. The part of the, you can see here the enter estimated cost All right. So you can see here the estimated cost is already populated with the amount payable as DSA based on the itinerary and based on the subsistence region. Okay. You need to make sure that as we were saying before, the TPO office is the correct one. So if we don't change it, this travel request will go to the TPOs in non-commercial AMMIs. So make sure that the TPO office is the correct one, and also make sure that the cost assignment, the cost center that will be charged for that trip, is the correct one. And you can do that by clicking on the cost assignment. Okay? So this enter estimated cost, this 1,140, is the amount that is automatically calculated by the system based on the dates and the subsistence region. You can include terminal expenses, right, from here, directly from here. So let's say that the staff member will go, even if it's with a UN transportation, he will be entitled for 4, right? Let's say that he will be entitled for 4 legs of terminal expenses. We can include terminal expenses from here using the calculate button, and we'll be able to add the terminal expenses for that particular trip. If we want to reduce the DSA part, we can use the enter deductions to apply a percentage of deduction. So we can use this screen, the enter deductions, to apply 50%, 30%, and even 100%. So if the staff member is not entitled, if the UNV is not entitled for DSA in a particular day, we can use this option to remove all the entitlement. Or instead of removing it, we can apply 50% deduction if the accommodation was provided at destination. So we can use this deduction to apply 50% deduction, and we will see that the system automatically changes the amount to be paid as DSA. Right? So instead of the 1,000, now we have 758, and the amount for DSA is now half of it. Okay, so you should make sure that the amount that the UNV is entitled for, it's properly included here. You can request for advance, all right, and if you request advance, the system will allow you to indicate the payment method. So it can be a bank transfer, or if you want the UNV to get paid by cash, you can select other and indicate cash or check in here. All right. Then you'll need to answer the mandatory questions for voluntary downgrade, higher standard of accommodation. If there is any particular trip in conjunction, for example, if the UNV is combining an official business with the R&R, you'll need to indicate here yes, and indicate the other type of travel. So, for example, if this official will be combined with the R&R, you will indicate here official travel combined with R&R, right? With R&R travel, and you will need to indicate the dates for the R&R and the place. So, with this field is how you can combine R&R with official travel. All right, and then that's almost it. From here, you can review and send your official travel request. So with this one, you were almost done with the official travel request. You have to make sure that you select the proper cost assignment, proper TP office, proper travel type, and make sure you include the different expenses that the UNV is entitled for. Okay. And from here, you can just review and submit. All right. So I think any other question before we close the session? The part for the R&R should be very similar. So if we want, we can spend 1 to 2 minutes to indicate the differences. Any questions before we show a little bit the R&R? I think the time is already over. And I mean, even if we didn't cover all the different screens, but at least you have a little bit the summary of the different steps and roles involved in the process. Okay, so we showed to you the employee list, how you can request. Yeah, how can I request the official travel, and how can I request an expense report? So we are going to click now on the entitlement. And Moses, yes. So you are asking about if you are able also to amend or to delete submitted travel request. So from here, we are focusing on creating new ones. Okay. If you select an existing one, depending on the status of the existing one, you will be able to do different things. So if you go down, in this case, this one, it's already approved, so you cannot amend or edit it, right? So this one, the first one, it's fully approved. Okay, but if there are others that, for example, you could raise a travel request and so you could save it as draft. From that travel request, you should be able to edit it or to cancel it. So depending on the status of the travel request, you will be able to edit, delete, only display. So that will depend on your on the status of the travel request. Okay. And if you want to understand what actions and who can edit or who can modify the a travel request, you have that in the. Remember, you always have in Umoja, right? You have the different job aids, right? So in the Umoja website, you have the job aids, and there are specific job aids for travel, right? So for travel, you have the job aids here, and these are the specific job aids for travel. And if you need to know the amendment process, okay, here you can see the amendment process and the workflow. You have the workflow, who can amend what and in which stage. So if you go into this amend travel request, here it will explain you how you can do that. All right, so people are asking me to show a little bit the R&R process, so I'm going to click on Create Entitlement Travel. Okay, so somebody's blocking my user account. Sorry. All right. I think it's myself, so I need to close it. Leave. All right, so let me go back. And let me click on the R&R part. So, Adeline, you are asking about the areas under the field offices. I don't get your question. So you're talking about the uniform personnel. So let me click again on the Karen Peters. And I'm going to select Create R&R. R&R entitlement travel. So under entitlement travel, the UNV is entitled only for R&R. Okay. You can see that as a UNV, they are only entitled for R&R under entitlement, so they don't have home leave, they don't have other entitlement travels. Okay. So I'll select the R&R, and in here, remember, in our presentation, we were saying that there were 3 different options for the R&R: free UN transportation, lump sum, and ticket. And you can see the reflection in here. So I can request as a travel administrator to calculate the lump sum. I can say directly that I want the UN to purchase the ticket for that R&R, or if I'm in a mission that is providing free UN transportation to staff and UNVs to go on R&R, I'll select the free UN transportation. Depending on my selection here, the steps and roles involved in the process will be different. Remember, we were saying that for free UN transportation, the roles were these ones, right? Only the HR partner is involved. If we select option UN purchase ticket, then the options or the roles involved are these ones. And if we ask for the lump sum calculation, then the process was the longest one, right? The one with the 2 branches, because we need to know the lump sum amount and then decide if we want ticket or lump sum. So make sure that if you select ticket, make sure you don't want lump sum to be calculated. So when you select lump sum, you can always change and decide that you prefer ticket. But if you select from the very beginning that you want ticket, then there will be no option for lump sum. Is that clear? Okay. All right. So that's basically when you select lump sum, then the different options available for the R&R are going to be very similar. You will need to indicate the itinerary, the destination place for R&R, and so on. Okay, so you can these screens are very similar. The itinerary, and then you indicate the cost assignment, the different expenses, and so on. Okay, but you have to pay attention to the very beginning, where you need to indicate the ticket, lump sum, or free UN transportation. All right, so I think time is over, so we already had people leaving the session because we went already out of time. So thank you for joining, and you can always ask further questions or comments to your local process experts or directly to us using the email. Okay, so we'll be sending to you the presentation so that you have it available, and you can always come to us for further questions or comments. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much to everybody.